The last time all 3 of my children were at my house, they smiled like strangers and left like thieves. That Sunday dinner still hurts my heart, not from the tomato sauce, but from the sadness I felt with every fake laugh. I raised them with love. They showed up with pens. Now they want my house. Before I forget who they are, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to sign up, because what happens next is important. The smell of burned garlic stuck to the curtains like a mistake. I stared at the small stain on the brown carpet near the table. The one Ethan left years ago with his dirty shoes. I never cleaned it all the way. Part of me thought it was cute back then. A little piece of my son left behind. Now it just looked like dirt. I heard the front door slowly open. "Hi, Dad," they said. 3 voices that were not truly warm. Ethan's was the loudest. He used to sound nice, but now his voice hurt my ears. Nancy came next with a nod. Her fancy, expensive smell came into the room before she did. And Tina, the youngest, came last, like always. She wore sunglasses inside and smiled too big. "I made your favorite," I said, trying to sound happy. "Spaghetti and meatballs, with homemade tomato sauce." I looked at them. None of them remembered. None of them cared. We sat down. The old wooden chairs made sounds under us, like my old body. I gave them each a plate. My hands shook a little, maybe from the hot pot, maybe not. "So?" Ethan started, wiping his mouth with a napkin he brought. "We've been talking, and we think it's time we, made some plans." Nancy cleared her throat. "For the future, for your safety, so you don't have to worry," Tina added with that same smile. I stopped my fork halfway to my mouth. "What kind of plans?" Ethan reached into his briefcase. That black briefcase with the gold buckle I gave him last Christmas. He didn't even remember. He pushed a cream-colored folder across the table. It looked too official and too final. "It's just a simple transfer," he said. "We talked to someone. If you sign the house over to us now, it'll make things easier for you, for all of us," Nancy added. She looked right at me. Her eyes were colder than I remembered. Tina leaned forward, putting her elbows on the table. She didn't seem bothered. Just in case, before things get confusing. "You've been forgetting things lately, haven't you?" My heart sank. There it was, the mean comment, the sharp words behind a smile. I laughed, but it came out broken. "So I'm losing my mind now, am I?" "No one said that," Ethan said quickly. "But we just want to be prepared for when you don't remember who we are," Tina said, smiling. She thought it was funny. She didn't see my hand shaking under the table. The room was silent. The room was too hot. The sauce was too sour. My throat hurt. I stared at the folder, with the pen on top like a weapon. "You think I'm that far gone?" I whispered. Nancy sighed. "We're trying to help, by taking my house." Ethan moved. "Dad," he said, "I buried your mother in this house." I snapped. "I changed your diapers on that couch. I held all of you when you were sick. I fought off monsters you thought were under your beds. This house isn't just wood and bricks. It's my whole life." More silence, this time sharp and tight. Tina stood up. "Let's not be so dramatic, okay? You've always said you didn't want to be a problem." That word, problem, hit me. My fork dropped and hit the plate loudly. I looked at all 3 of them, my children, my family, and I saw strangers with keys in their pockets and a desire for money in their eyes. "I'm not signing anything," I said. Nancy stood too. "You will eventually—" Ethan looked at her. "Nancy," she stopped him. "He will. He just needs time." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My throat was closed up. They left an hour later. They barely ate their food. They didn't even say "love you" when they left. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. I sat in the chair. The one with the small rip on the armrest. The one I used to rock them in when they couldn't sleep. I sat there for a long time. I stared at the folder they left behind. The pen was still there. I picked it up. I broke it in half. And that's when I knew they weren't just trying to take my house. They were trying to get rid of me. And I wasn't going to let them. The waiting room smelled like cleaning spray and old magazines. I sat in the hard chair. My briefcase was held tight in my lap. The clock ticked too loudly. A young nurse called my name, David Hill. She didn't look old enough to drive, much less tell me the bad news I was waiting for. I smiled anyway. That's what men like me do. Smile. Stay calm. Make it easier for everyone else. Inside the doctor's office, the walls were a boring brown color. It made you feel small. like a wall in a forgotten motel. I looked at a picture of mountains on the wall. It was a bad try at making me feel better. The doctor, Dr. Ketting, came in with a file. His eyes were too kind for the words I knew were coming. He sat down. He cleared his throat. It's early signs, David. Mild cognitive impairment, possibly the beginning of Alzheimer's. It felt like cold water, not a hit. It felt slower, like drowning. I tried to speak, but my tongue felt stuck. Finally, I said, I've just been forgetting words' names. That happens with age. It does, he said kindly. But with the test results, it looks like a pattern. A pattern? Like I was becoming a number in a list. I looked down at my hands. My wedding ring was still there, even though Helena was gone. My fingers were starting to look like my father's, thin and with lines. I wondered if he felt this way when he started forgetting my birthday. Is it for sure? It's not for sure. Not yet. But I'd suggest we start watching it. Maybe look into legal plans while your mind is still strong. Legal plans. I felt like I was being slowly kicked out of my own life. He gave me a small book. I didn't read the title. I just put it in my briefcase like it was a shameful receipt. As I stood to leave, I saw something through the crack of the open door. A movement. I took a step closer and looked closely. Tina, my youngest, the one who used to cry when I left for work. She was outside the door, leaning against the wall. Her face was half hidden by her phone. I froze. She wasn't supposed to be here. She didn't notice me, or maybe she did, and didn't care. She was looking at her phone, laughing at something, standing outside the room where I was just told my mind might be disappearing. I stepped out. Tina. She was surprised and looked up. It was a second too late for her to pretend she wasn't surprised. Oh, hey, she said, quickly putting the phone in her jacket. I was just, wanted to check in, see how it went. How did you know I was here? She waited. Ethan mentioned it. My chest felt tight. That wasn't true. I hadn't told any of them. I didn't want to torture them. Or maybe I didn't want to give them a reason to hurt me. I didn't think you'd be interested, I said. Her face changed for a second, like she knew I wasn't as gone as she hoped. I'm always interested, Dad, she said smoothly. We just want what's best for you. That phrase again. I walked past her without answering. The book in my briefcase made a sound like a whisper. When we got to the car, she offered to drive. No, I said. She tried to insist. I said no. My voice had a hardness she wasn't used to. She backed off. I got into the driver's seat and locked the doors before she could say anything else. The ride home was quiet. Just the sound of old tires on the road. I thought about how she used to ask me to sing along to the radio. Now she sat in the passenger seat, looking at her phone, probably texting her brothers. By the time I got to the house, something had changed inside me. They weren't circling me like worried children. They were like birds waiting to eat a dead animal. And I realized something scary. They weren't waiting for me to lose my mind. They were hoping I would. As she got out of the car and said a quick goodbye, I stayed behind. I watched her walk away, the same girl I once held when she had a fever. Now a woman I didn't know. I sat there, holding the steering wheel tight. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't about caring. It wasn't about love. It was about being in charge. And they weren't going to get it. Not without a fight. I found the documents by mistake. I wasn't looking for them. I was looking for the blue envelope where I kept the last birthday card Helena gave me. I hadn't read it in a while, and that day I needed to hear her voice in my head again. The soft way she used to call me Dave, how she always added those silly little hearts in her writing. Instead, I found a folder hidden behind my file cabinet drawer, one of those old metal ones that gets stuck and pinches your fingers. This folder was new, too new, with sharp corners and no dust. When I opened it, my stomach dropped. Legal papers, forms to change who owned the house. A copy of the house deed with my name and my signature, but I didn't remember signing them. The room felt smaller and hotter. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. The papers fell onto the blanket. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, but not quite. The curve of the D was too clean. The tail of the L didn't loop the way I always looped it. It wasn't my signature, and I knew it. They had faked my name. All three of them could get to my files and my mail. All three had watched me for months, treating me like I was already disappearing, and now they were erasing me, line by line. I grabbed the phone. My hands shook so much, I almost dropped it twice before I found Ethan's name. I called. He didn't answer. I didn't bother with Tina. I called Nancy. She answered on the third ring. "Hey, Dad." My voice was tighter than I meant it to be. "What is this?" "The deed transfer." "Who did this?" A pause. Just one heartbeat too long. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. Look, we were trying to help. It's just a safety measure. You've been forgetting things. We didn't want anything to happen legally. What, Nancy? If I become useless? If I forget your names?" "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." She sighed. "We'll talk about it later." "Okay." "No, we'll talk about it now, Dad." I hung up. I couldn't feel my hands. Just heat in my chest, in my face, behind my eyes. I pressed both hands to the sides of my head like I could hold my brain together. A fake signature. A slow theft. They were trying to make me disappear before I was even gone. I spent the rest of the day moving through the house like a ghost. My steps echoed. Every photograph felt like a lie. That picture of Tina, at age 7, smiling, with chocolate on her face. She used to cry when I left the room. Now she was working with her brothers to take what was mine. I sat down in Helena's old chair. The leather was cracked. The armrest was shaped like her body. I ran my hand along the edge. The quiet sound of the fridge in the kitchen was the only sound. And for the first time in my life I was afraid of my own children. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the house felt like a betrayal. Every shadow reminded me that I wasn't safe in the place I built with my own hands. At dawn I made coffee. Black, bitter, the way Helena liked it. I went back to the file cabinet and took out every legal paper I had. The mortgage, the insurance, the will from 20 years ago. I sat at the kitchen table and read each one line by line, like a man looking for his own name in a world that was trying to erase him. And I made a decision. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. But I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't even accuse. No, I would outsmart them. They forgot who raised them, and they were about to remember. The walls in this house know too much. They have heard years of quiet songs, whispered apologies, silent screams, and now secrets, ugly ones, the kind that rot in the corners when no one is looking. It was just after 9 p.m. when I heard it. Voices, quiet, but familiar. The sound of the floorboards told me they were upstairs in the guest room, the one I used to fill with stuffed animals and old blankets. I walked out of my room quietly, without shoes. One hand on the railing. The wood was cold. The air was sharp with Ethan's too strong perfume. My robe dragged a little on the floor. I didn't care. They didn't know I was awake. I stopped just outside the door, which was left open just a little too wide. Their voices came through. Tina laughing. "We'll put it up for sale before the end of summer. The realtor said the neighborhood is at its best. Ethan, we need to act fast, before he changes his mind. Or before he—" Nancy stopped him. "He's not changing his mind. He signed the damn thing. We just need to file it." Silence, then a low, cold laugh. "He doesn't even remember signing it," Nancy added. "And if he does, we'll say he's confused. Who's going to believe him over the three of us?" I held my breath. They were planning this. All of it. It was on purpose. And cruel. It wasn't confusion. It was theft disguised as love. I backed away slowly. My foot hit a loose board, and it made a soft click. I froze. The voices stopped. I didn't breathe. Then Tina said too loudly, "Did you hear that?" I turned and moved quickly and quietly down the stairs into the kitchen. The chair scraped as I pulled it out, and sat, just as Ethan came down with that fake sweet smile on his face. "Hey, Dad," he said. "Too light. You okay?" I looked up slowly, straight into his eyes. "Couldn't sleep," I said. Behind him, Nancy was on the stairs. Tina was behind her like a shadow. "Something on your mind?" Ethan asked, pulling the kettle from the stove. He wasn't making coffee. He was trying to waste time. I shrugged. Just thinking about the house? His hands paused for a tiny second, but I saw it. I've lived here for 40 years, I said, gently tapping the table. Every crack in this floorboard has a memory in it. I don't think I could ever leave. Tina came in now, trying too hard to sound normal. Well, it's just a house, Dad. No, I said quietly. It's my house. The silence was thick. Nancy moved. Ethan looked down. You all forget, I added, that this place was paid for with your mother's extra work, with my second job at the bistro, with skipped vacations, with sacrifices you never even knew about. Ethan tried to say something, but I held up a hand. I was honestly surprised by how steady it was. I might be forgetful. Yes, I might lose words, lose names, lose moments, but what I won't lose is my gut feeling, and right now it's screaming at me. None of them spoke. I stood up slowly. My knees made sounds. My back hurt, but I looked at them one by one. When the time comes, I said, you'll remember this conversation. Nancy's jaw tightened. Are you threatening us? I smiled. It didn't reach my eyes. No, Nancy, I'm remembering. I walked away. My feet were steady on the cold floor. They had tried to hide their betrayal behind closed doors, but they forgot something important. This is still my house, and it hears everything. The lawyer looked like he should have been on a golf course, not behind a desk. He wore light brown pants and fancy shoes. He smiled too big and talked too fast. Nice to finally meet you, Mr. Hill, he said, holding out a hand I didn't want to shake. His office smelled like old coffee and plastic. Quick, good at his job, no heart. Call me David, I said, sitting in the hard leather chair. My body was tired, but not weak. He looked at the file in front of him, then at me. I understand you're here about some problems with property transfers. Something like that. He smiled again, but this time it wasn't a real smile. I wasn't here for small talk. I'd also like to look at any money from my father-in-law's estate, I added. His name was Elizabeth Harris. He died in. That surprised him. He blinked. That was a while back? You think there's something not finished? I don't think. I know. He nodded slowly. His fingers were already moving on his keyboard. Give me a moment. We'll get the file from the old records. I waited for 10 minutes, then 15. I stared at a picture frame on his desk. His family, I guessed. Wife. 2 daughters. A golden retriever. Everyone smiling. Everyone pretending things last forever. They don't. He said finally. Here we go. Looks like your father-in-law did leave a fund, set up through a private trust. It was meant to go directly to his son-in-law, you, after your mother-in-law's death. I sat up straighter. She passed in, I said. He nodded. His lips were in a tight line. Yes. So the transfer should have happened then. Should have? He hesitated, scrolled again, then frowned. Well, it shows here that the fund was taken in full, signed for by me. He didn't answer right away. He just turned the screen slightly toward me. My name, my father-in-law's trust, my inheritance, and a signature. Not mine, not even close. Everything in my body became still. Who? I whispered. He looked again. There's a note here. It was approved by an Ethan Hill. My son took my father-in-law's money 12 years ago. I stared at the screen.
Pathetic flame.
A single line of black ink. A fake name, a false moment. He didn't even tell me, didn't ask, didn't even pretend. I felt my throat close up like sadness trying to get out. Are you okay, Mr. Hill? No, but I nodded. I walked out of that office with a copy of everything. I held the papers to my chest like a lifeline. My car felt strange when I sat inside. The air was old. The steering wheel was rough under my hands. 12 years. He'd been keeping this secret for 12 years. Watching me struggle to fix the roof. Watching me cut out grocery coupons. Watching me sell my old watches when Helena got sick. And he said nothing. That night I sat in the living room. The lights were off. The house was silent. I thought about my father-in-law, about how proud he was. The day I bought this house with Helena, how he said, "You're doing better than we ever did, Dave." I thought about how I never asked him for anything. And still, he tried to leave me something. A kind gift hidden away for when I'd need it most. Ethan stole that gift from me and didn't even care. I sat with the anger. Let it fill me. Let it settle. Then I opened a new folder on my desk. I named it Contingency, because this wasn't about sadness anymore. It was a fight, and I had just found my first move. I didn't cry. Not after the lawyer's office. Not after reading the fake documents under the kitchen light. Not after finding out that my own son had stolen the last thing my father-in-law ever gave me. Tears felt like a luxury, one I couldn't afford anymore. Instead, I started my day at 5 a.m., same as always. I toasted one piece of rye bread, drank black coffee, no sugar. I sat by the window as I always did, listening to the world before it got busy. But something had changed. Me. That morning, I picked up the phone, not to call my children, but to call someone else. I found his card inside a kitchen drawer, half hidden under old coupons and broken rubber bands. Matthew Grayson, elder law specialist. He had visited the community center 2 years ago to talk about wills and trusts. I remembered because no one had taken him seriously. Too young, too thin, too many questions. But I remembered how he looked me in the eye when I asked something, how he didn't talk down to me like I was already fading away. Grayson Legal Services, he answered himself. This is David Hill. I need to talk, but it needs to stay quiet. I met him that afternoon in his small office, above a bookstore. It was between a failing dance studio and a nail salon. He didn't ask questions right away. He poured tea, listened, and let me talk. I told him everything, my sickness, the faked deed, the fake signature on my father-in-law's trust, the mean behavior of children who had grown up thinking love was something to trade for a house. When I finished, he didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, I believe you, and something inside me, a quiet, shaky part, let out a breath. Over the next few weeks, I worked with Matthew in secret. We created a new will. We moved my money, made a new power of attorney with strong protections. And most importantly, we took away every bit of control my children thought they had. One by one, I changed the locks, both real and legal. I learned the words for trusts, rules that can't be changed. And my rights. I asked questions, took notes, and understood every single line of what was mine. At home, I said nothing. When Ethan showed up without warning with a casserole and too much perfume, I smiled and asked about his kids. When Nancy sent a simple text, How's everything going, Dad? I replied with a thumbs-up emoji. And when Tina asked if I needed help with the bills, I thanked her sweetly and told her I had it all handled. They thought they had already won, that I was too slow, too weak, too lost. I let them think it. I let them believe they were dealing with the same man who ironed their graduation gowns and stayed up all night baking birthday cakes with boxed mix and tired eyes. They didn't know me now. Not this new version. This version watched, waited, and planned. One night I sat by the fireplace with a thick binder on my lap. My new will, a quiet weapon. Every page felt like a brick in a fortress. No one would break into again. Matthew had even written a letter to go with the final version. I read it out loud to myself. To my children, you taught me what forgetting feels like. I hope you never forget this. The last thing I did that night was write 3 dates on the back of an old receipt. Each one was a step, a decision, a silence. They thought I was breaking down, but I was building something, and soon they'd see exactly what I had built when it was too late to stop it. I sat alone in the garage that night, sitting on a box. The old heater was humming softly behind me. Boxes were stacked to the ceiling. Memories were packed away in cardboard, labeled in Helena's handwriting. Xmas, Ethan's art, Dave, old work files. Dust floated in the light from the lamp like time hanging in the air. I pulled down the heaviest box. Dave, old work files. Inside, my life before I was just a dad, old business cards, worn notebooks, name tags from the law office I worked at before the kids were born, back when I had a corner desk and a window. I had forgotten how much I had given up. Not lost, given willingly for them. The garage door groaned as wind pushed against it. A branch scratched the side of the house. I didn't move. I kept reading letters I wrote to Helena when she was far away. A rejection letter from Harvard Law. I had kept it like a scar, a silent reminder, and buried under a folder of tax papers was a small photo I hadn't seen in years. Ethan and his first dance show. Nancy, with a baseball trophy too big for her little arms. Tina asleep on my chest, sticky with ice cream. I stared at it for a long time. Then I stood and walked into the kitchen. I laid it gently on the table. Next to it, I placed my last heating bill, 'cause it was me who paid that, not them. It was me who worked extra hours when Helena got laid off. It was me who pawned her engagement ring to pay for Nancy's braces. It was me who skipped every vacation for 10 years, so Ethan could go to art school in New York and never once came home for Thanksgiving after Pooks's. It was me who let Tina move back in for just a few months after college, and she stayed 2 years without paying rent. I remembered every sacrifice, and not once did they say thank you. When Helena got sick, I didn't ask them for help, not because I didn't need it, but because they were already too busy, too far away, too comfortable letting me carry the weight alone. I cooked, bathed, and held her through every coughing fit, every fall, every day she forgot her own name, but remembered mine with shaky lips. And after she died, they didn't even stay for the full week. Nancy had a conference. Ethan had a gallery opening. Tina didn't even show up. They only remembered me when a lawyer called. Now they hung around like flies around a wound, waiting for me to rot, but I wasn't done. Not yet. I went upstairs, opened my closet, pulled out the brown leather journal I had kept hidden. Inside were records, receipts, and notes of every loan I gave them, every unpaid promise, every missed visit. Each one had a date and was detailed. I wasn't keeping score back then. But now I needed to see the whole picture. Because when people change your story, the only way to survive is to make sure your truth is louder than their lies. I turned to a blank page and wrote, "They think I forgot." I remember everything. The pen shook, but not from weakness, from rage, from clarity, from a fire I thought had died with Helena, but had only been quiet for a time. The next morning I got dressed in my best clothes. Tie, hair combed, jacket like armor. I wasn't going to church. I was going to war, and this time I wouldn't be the one on my knees. The courthouse smelled like dust, and official papers, ink, old wood, and quiet anger. I sat across from Matthew Grayson in a narrow hallway with flickering lights. He slid a thick folder across the bench toward me. "This," he said softly, "is everything. New will trust established. Durable power of attorney, living directive. You're protected." I ran my fingers over the folder. Smooth, heavy, final. I swallowed hard. "Will they know?" "Eventually," he said. "But not today." "Good." Today wasn't for them. Matthew stood and straightened his tie. "You ready to file?" I looked up at him, then nodded. I was ready the moment they tried to get rid of me. Back home, I pulled into the driveway and just sat in the car for a while. The house looked the same, but there was something sharper in my reflection in the mirror. A squareness to my jaw, a strange stillness in my eyes. Not soft, not sad, just firm. Inside I made tea, chamomile. I added honey, not for sweetness, but for strength. The house was quiet, a rare moment of peace, but I wasn't dumb enough to think it would last. The phone rang just after noon. Tina. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Hi, Dad. Cheerful. Too cheerful. What do you need, Tina?" A pause. She laughed. "What makes you think I need something?" "Because you always do. I was just checking in. Wanted to see how you were feeling." "Fine," I said. "Busy." "Oh yeah? With what?" She didn't mean it. It wasn't real interest. It was spying. "I've been learning," I said, "about trusts and estate law, and how easy it is for someone to commit fraud." Silence. "Then is this about the papers?" "Dad?" "No," I said, my voice flat. "This is about me and the fact that you forgot I was still here." She was quiet. "Then we were just worried." "You weren't worried. You were waiting." I ended the call. The next day, I met Matthew again. This time in his office, where we finished everything. He checked the filings again, confirmed the security of the trust. Every piece of my money was now locked down and protected forever. My house was no longer my children's reach. My bank accounts were protected with many layers of security they'd never break. My life's work was now written in stone. On the walk back to my car, I passed a bookstore and stopped in front of the window. A memoir was on the shelf. The silent men speak loudest. I almost laughed. Back home, I stood in the living room and looked at the photos. The couch where Tina used to nap. The fireplace where Ethan would hang stockings. The kitchen where Nancy spilled orange juice and cried core college rejection letters. And then I looked at the folder in my hand. It wasn't just paper and ink, but armor. They thought I was weak. They thought memory loss made me useless. But I remembered something they didn't. I built this family. I held it together, and now I was setting it free. Not for them, for me. It started with cinnamon. The smell floated through the house like a memory. Warm, sweet, familiar. I hadn't made my apple cobbler in years. Not since before Helena got sick. But tonight it was back on the menu. I set the table with my best dishes. The wedding china, white with small gold vines along the edge. The set we only used on holidays. And once on the night Helena told me she was dying. Tonight, I would use it for something else. Justice. I lit candles. Folded napkins. I even played the old Frank Sinatra record they all used to roll their eyes at. I wanted it to feel like the past. I wanted them to believe for just a moment that I was going back to the man they thought they could take advantage of. They arrived right on time. Ethan was first. His shoes clicked on the floor like angry words. Nancy came in behind him, her phone stuck to her hand. Tina brought a six-pack of craft beer like a college student at a party. "Wow," Ethan said, looking at the table. "This looks amazing, Dad." I smiled. "Trying something special," I said. "Thought we could have a nice night, like old times." They relaxed just a little. We ate. We laughed.
It did anyway.
I watched, listened, and waited. Halfway through dessert, I stood. "I almost forgot," I said, wiping my mouth with my napkin. "I have something for you all." Ethan got excited. Nancy looked up from her phone. Tina tilted her head like a puppy. I walked to the sideboard, picked up the envelope, the one with gold trim and thick paper. "I made some changes," I said, "to the will, the house, everything." Ethan's smile moved. "What kind of changes?" Nancy asked, already tense. I took a deep breath. "I've decided to change how things are divided." Tina laughed at me. "Dad," I cut her off. "No, you listen." They froze. Not because I was loud, but because I wasn't. "I know what you did," I said, placing the envelope on the table. "All of you." Their eyes moved to each other. A silent ping-pong of guilt. "I know about the fake documents, about the trust my father-in-law left me that Ethan took behind my back. I know about the lawyer you visited, the conversations you thought I didn't hear, the plans you made for this house." Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. Nancy's jaw clenched. Tina stared at her plate. I may forget names, dates, sometimes why I walk into a room, but I will never forget this silence. I slid the envelope across the table. Inside is the updated will. Everything has been placed into a trust. Irrevocable, ironclad. My house is no longer yours to fight over. Tina looked up. "What the heck, Dad? What the heck?" I repeated, my voice low. "You faked my name, Tina? You tried to steal from me." She stood. "You're crazy." I stood too, calm. "Then sue me," Ethan whispered. "Dad, you're being dramatic." "No," I said for the first time in decades. "I'm being clear." I turned to Nancy. "And you? You stole money meant to protect me. Money my father-in-law left for me. And you kept it, through all the years I struggled. Through my wife's sickness. Through every sacrifice I made. You never once told me." Her face was pale. "I was going to pay you back." "No, you weren't," I said. "And now you won't have the chance." I stepped back. "I'm not leaving you with this house or my money. I'm not leaving you with anything but the truth." Their chairs scraped back as they stood. Voices got louder. I didn't respond. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I let their noise fade behind me. When I returned, they were already halfway out the door. Too shocked to yell, too embarrassed to cry. I watched their backs disappear into the dark, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a father. I felt like a man getting back his name. The letters went out the next morning. 3 envelopes, thick, white, and sealed with a weight much heavier than ink or paper, one for each of them. No ceremony, no warning, no drama. I didn't text them, didn't call. They'd done enough talking. Inside each letter was a personal message, handwritten on purpose. Final, not just a statement of truth, but a judgment to Ethan. I wrote, "You always spoke of art, beauty, legacy, but when it came to mine, you saw only a chance to get something. You used my fading memory as a ladder. You stepped on my dignity with designer shoes. This house will not be your art gallery." To Nancy, I wrote, "You were always the leader, the decision maker. But you made choices for me, not with me. You stole from me before I even knew I was missing something. The trust my father-in-law built for me. You spent it on yourself. I hope it bought you everything you thought I didn't need." To Tina, I wrote, "You used to cry when I left the room. Now you laugh when you leave with pieces of me. You thought being the youngest gave you permission to take without giving back. But the girl I held in my arms is gone. I don't recognize this woman, and I don't owe her a single thing." I signed each letter, not with "Love, Dad," but with my full name, David Hill. Not just a father, a man, a witness, and now a wall you will never climb again. Then I made one final stop. It was a small office near the edge of town. A brick building with a faded blue awning, St. Andrew's Shelter for Men. They knew who I was when I walked in. "We weren't sure you'd come in person," the director said softly. His name was John. He wore glasses. No fancy clothes. His hands were rough from work. Not fancy life. "I wanted to," I said. He told me to sit. "You've done something amazing, Mr. Hill." I shook my head. "No, I'm just fixing a mistake." I almost made. They had already started the process. Legal documents were filed. Property transfers started. My house, my safe place, my battleground, my prison was no longer just mine. It would become a safe place for men like me. Men thrown away by the very people they had once lived for. John's eyes filled with tears as he read through the deed. "You're saving lives with this." I nodded, but my voice cracked when I said, "I just want someone to feel safe in it again." That night, I packed a small suitcase. A few clothes, my journal, Helena's last letter, and I left. No big event, no goodbye. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, just quiet. Mine, the kind of place where you could hear your own thoughts without being told they were disappearing. I got calls for days. Ethan, Nancy, Tina. Messages filled with disbelief, then rage, then guilt, pretending to be anger. I didn't answer. The silence was my inheritance to them. Let them sit with it. Let them scream into it. Let them remember it. Because from this point on, their father didn't just walk away. He walked forward. I didn't expect it to go public. I never thought my story, my pain, would be printed in black ink on cheap newspaper and passed around in grocery store lines and waiting rooms. But there it was, front page of the Riverwood County Tribune. Local widower donates home after family tries to seize it. I may forget them, but they'll never forget this. My picture was small in the corner, taken from behind as I handed over the deed to John at the shelter. They hadn't asked for a quote, but they used my words anyway, the ones I wrote in those letters. By the time I had made my morning coffee, the calls started. Reporters, talk show hosts, groups that help people. Strangers, "Can we feature your story? Would you be willing to speak at our event? You're an inspiration." Inspiration, a funny word for someone who once sat in a dark kitchen, wondering if he was vanishing. The article didn't name my children. Thank God for small mercies. But they knew. Everyone in town knew. And so did they. Ethan texted, "You made us look like monsters." Nancy emailed, "You've ruined our reputations." Tina, she posted a bitter comment on the Tribune's website under a fake username. They thought I'd be ashamed, but I wasn't. I was seen, heard, believed. Men came up to me in the grocery store, in the pharmacy, in the parking lot of the bank. "Thank you," they'd whisper, "for showing us we're not crazy, for showing us we're not alone." One man, maybe in his late 60s, touched my hand as we reached for the same can of soup. He looked me in the eye and said, "They called me forgetful too, but I remembered enough to lock my bank account before my daughter drained it." We smiled, and it was enough. The shelter sent updates weekly, photos, stories, progress. The front room, my old living room, was now a reading space. Warm lights, shelves of books. Quiet men who had nowhere else to go now had a place with my name on the deed, a place built with the bones of my old life and reborn with purpose. I didn't give interviews, I didn't sit on talk shows, but I sent letters to groups that help people, to lawmakers, to churches and libraries and elder care centers, telling them what happened to me and how often it happens in silence. I called it the quiet theft because that's what it was, a slow, erasing, polite, legal, almost invisible, until I refused to vanish. They wanted me quiet, forgetful, grateful for scraps. Instead, I left them with headlines, unanswered calls, and a house full of ghosts they'd never own. I stood in the kitchen of my new apartment that night, smaller, yes, but full of light, and brewed another cup of coffee. Outside it rained softly, clean, gentle. I opened the window, let it in, because for the first time in a very long time, I felt clean too. I stood in front of the mirror that morning and barely knew the man staring back. Not because he looked different, but because he looked whole. My silver hair was combed. My shirt was clean. My pants freshly pressed. Not for a funeral, not for court, not for anyone's approval. Just for me. I walked the block and a half to the shelter. No reporters, no children, just the gentle sound of the town moving around me. Dogs barking, a lawnmower humming in the distance, someone playing jazz from a porch 2 streets over. John met me at the door. He smiled, arms open. We finished the upstairs room. "Come see." We climbed the stairs, the same ones where Helena used to carry Ethan when he fell asleep in the car, where Tina used to sit and tie her shoes so slowly on the first day of school, where Nancy once slipped and cried like she'd lost a body part, but forgot it all an hour later. This house was memory, and now it was new. The room was painted warm yellow with white curtains swaying in the breeze. A small bed, a writing desk, a soft chair in the corner. It smelled like cologne and wood cleaner. "It's the quiet room," John said, "for the ones who need a place to think, to breathe, to be alone, but not forgotten." I didn't answer. I just placed my hand on the windowsill and looked out. And for the first time in what felt like 100 years, I didn't feel watched. I felt noticed. Later that day, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Ethan. I sat on the back porch of my apartment, opened it slowly, and read. "Dad, I didn't understand what I was doing. I thought I was helping. That's not an excuse. You were right. I was selfish. We all were. I'm sorry. Not for the house. Not for the money. For forgetting you were a person before you were our father. And for thinking you wouldn't fight back. You did, and I'll never forget that." No signature, just a line at the bottom. "I hope you find peace in the home you made with or without us." I folded it once, tucked it into the back of my journal. I didn't cry, not because I didn't feel anything, but because I'd already felt everything, and I had gotten through it. That night, I lit a single candle, sat in the living room. No TV, no phone. Just me and memory. Not the kind that slips away, the kind that stays. I remembered every sacrifice, every betrayal, every step I took to get myself back. And I knew this. Even if my mind fails one day, even if my body forgets the names of streets, recipes, or people who once meant the world to me, I will never forget who I am. They tried to erase me, but I rewrote the ending, and now they will never forget that. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments.